Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for this afternoon session where we're looking at foreign trader and how it's used in Sage 50 accounts. Session should last around about 45 minutes. During that time, hopefully there'll be plenty of time for me to answer any questions that you might have along the way. Now, just in case anyone is new to webinars, we'll quickly run through a little bit of housekeeping just so you know what's going to be happening, just in case anyone is brand new to the sessions. So you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you've got one and you've enabled it, you will find that it's muted automatically. So any questions that you might have for me today, you'll need to pop them into the questions panel. To access that, you just need to click the little icon on your toolbar. It's the one that looks like the speech bubble. Give it a click. You'll then have access to that box in the bottom right-hand corner. So any comments or questions along the way, just pop them in there, click send. Just myself running the session with you all this afternoon, though. Not many of you logged in, so hopefully it'll give me a good chance to pick those up and react to your comments as they come through. So keep them coming. If I don't get a chance to pick them up during the session, hopefully there'll be plenty of time to pick them up at the end as well. And if I can't, what we'll do is I'll just email you afterwards. There is an opportunity to download a copy of the slides that we're using today via the handouts option. So two versions of those. One is the full color version that we're using on the slides today. And there's what we term a print friendly version, because some people do say, I like to print them out. So rather than you waste an ink cartridge here and there or a toner cartridge, we strip all the color out just to make it a bit quicker to print as well. Now, as usual, the session is being recorded and you will receive an email afterwards, and that will include a link to today's recording. So if you need a bit of a recap, you'll have that available. You get that email round about an hour after we finish. There'll also be links on there so you can register for our upcoming webinars. As of this morning, our timetable now runs up to the end of January. So loads of sessions in there. In the new year, we'll be looking at sort of topics relating to year end. So the year end itself, company archives, and also clearing records, so tidying up your accounts as well. I'll tell you more about those a little bit later on, but do watch out for that email. It will also include a link so you can watch our other recordings as well. So if you're fairly new to webinars, or maybe you find yourself with a spare half hour here and there, and you think, well, just develop my knowledge a little bit, make sure my understanding's right, then I've got loads of recordings available for you. So do take advantage of that as well. Right, so this is what I'm covering in this afternoon's session for Foreign Trader. So a little bit of an introduction to Foreign Trader and also covering availability as well. We'll look at setting it up, what's involved, really simple, that one. Entering transactions, again, really simple. Only thing that's really any different is that you key in your transactions in the foreign currency and you include an exchange rate. We'll pick up on the two more complicated aspects of the Foreign Trader module law, so the exchange rate revaluation. So when you are entering transactions, if there's a difference between the values by the time they get converted back, so you might enter your invoice at one exchange rate and the receipt against it or the payment against it at a slightly different exchange rate. So we're going to show you how Sage handles that automatically for you. And then we'll also pick up on what I think is the most complicated part, foreign bank account revaluation. Sometimes people just can't get their heads around the revaluation aspects of Foreign Trader. It is maths at the end of the day. So if you're quite strong on maths, then you'll understand this. Or if you've done it manually in the past as well, you'll probably pick it up really straight, like nice and easily. Obviously, I'll try and include some examples to keep it simple, though, just to try and explain the concept. So that's what we're going to run through. Just at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support. Remember, you are getting that recording as well. So if you are wanting to work through that at your own pace, maybe if it's fairly new to you, you might think, well, actually, I didn't quite get that, or there's certain aspects I didn't understand. So again, watch out for that follow-up email. So we'll explain more about the additional support. Help Center is a great source of help. And obviously, if there are any questions, I'll pick those up as well. Anyway, let's get stuck in. So let's start with a bit of an introduction to the Foreign Trader option. So the Foreign Trader module, which it's not switched on by default. So we'll cover that in a moment. But it makes trading with your overseas customers and suppliers really straightforward. So those customers and suppliers where you need to operate and you deal with in something other than your base currency. Your base currency that I'm going to use today is going to be pound sterling, but obviously you're based in Republic of Ireland, you're going to probably have euros as your base currency, but you could have your base currency set as anything. So anything other than your base currency, that's where Foreign Trader comes in handy. It enables you to set up foreign currency records. That's for your customers, suppliers, and bank accounts. You'll be able to produce documents such as invoices, sales orders, purchase orders, customer statements, remittances in the relevant currency. So again, if you're looking at the if you're looking, if you're looking at the activity on a supplier account where you buy and sell in dollars, when you're dealing with that supplier, for instance, you can see the activity in that as well. And we'll see that in the session today. Now, it means you will be able to enter foreign currency transactions. You apply that foreign currency value, you enter the exchange rate, and Sage will do the rest for you. I'll explain more about entering transactions in just a few moments. Any differences? So let's say your invoice, you enter your purchase invoice at one exchange rate and you make a payment against that to pay off the invoice, but you enter it as a different exchange rate. So where there's a difference in the base currency values, then your software will automatically post any required adjustments for you. So you don't need to get involved in that. Compared to if you were doing that manually, normally if you were sat there doing it manually, what you do is you'd sit there and go, right, I've been invoiced for $100, right, what's the equivalent value in my base currency? You'd be sat there with your calculator working that out, and that's what you'd key into your Sage accounts. You then do the Sage for your payment against that invoice. Again, what's the exchange rate? What's it cost you in your base currency? If there is a difference there, that's what you would call an exchange rate difference. And that's where the revaluation transactions come in. But we'll see that in the demo. Now, I've included on the slides there a guide to Foreign Trader. So I've included a link to the guide that's in our Help Center. So it's a really good starting point. Now, availability-wise, the Foreign Trader module is included in the professional level only. That's been included as part of your subscription. But it does need to be switched on. It's not switched on by default. So you need to be on professional, or if you're an accountant, client manager version, you can enable it on there as well. So you would need to be on professional or the client manager version to enable Foreign Trader. If you're on the essentials level or the standard level of Sage 50 accounts, then there is an additional subscription. When I last looked, which was about 2 weeks ago, it was showing in the Sage shop as being £13 per month. Now that would, if you've got multiple companies, that would cover all of your companies as well. It's not just the one. So it's just a flat sort of addition to your subscription, that one. Now to switch it on, which we'll see in just a moment, we're just going to go to Tools, Activation, and then you choose the option to Enable Foreign Trader, and it will launch a wizard similar to what you can see on the screenshot there. We then have access to the currencies table. We'll set up some customer records just so you can see what's involved, supplier records, and also bank accounts. Now, one thing to note with regard to customers, suppliers, and bank accounts is that if that account already has activity against it, so you've got transactions recorded, then you can't switch currency for that account. What you would need to do is set up an additional one and either transfer the balance across, whatever's outstanding, or if it's a bank balance, whatever the balance is, transfer that across. And then what you'd probably do is mark the original one as something like do not use or something along those lines. So you're switching across essentially. Okay, so let's have a quick look at getting it switched on first of all. So I'll switch to my screen. I'm going to be using version 31 of Sage 50 accounts today, so let's just bring that up. Make sure I've got the right one. So I should be in version 31. Yeah. So let me just, I think I've got another instance of it open as well. There, we'll get rid of that one. Right, so I'm in version 31. Now, as far as we're concerned and what we're looking at today, the foreign trader aspect, there's no difference. It's going to work in exactly the same way. It's something that's been around for a long time, the foreign trader module. So I think back in, I think that's 2013, it was sort of made available across the board for everyone. But it was available just prior to that as well. Anyway, we'll get stuck into a bit of a demo. So I'm in the professional version. Now, all I've got in this company, I haven't entered any transactions yet. So you'll see at the bottom, it says 0. I'll just pop into transactions so you can see it's blank as well. I've created some customers, which I've clearly indicated what currency I'm going to be using. But at the moment, if I pop into this one I've got called Euro Customer, and we pop into the defaults tab, you'll see that the currency option is grayed out. So it is grayed out. It's picked up my base currency. If I pop into settings and currencies, you'll see that basically you've got some options available, but you're not really going to be able to use these at this stage. But you can see at this stage, pound sterling, just so happens it's number 1 on my list. That's the one I've flagged as the base currency. Right, okay. So to switch it on and activate foreign trader module, we're going to go to Tools, Activation, and then into the option Enable Foreign Trader. So just click Yes to close the windows in the background, and it launches that foreign trader setup wizard. Now, 3 simple steps to this one. Just gives us a little bit of information about it. So we click Next, and we're prompted with 2 options. Now, first of all, we've got our revaluation nominal code. So 7906 is the default. You can change that if required. It's the one that's set up by default. If you do need to change it, just a case of selecting one from the list. If you haven't already created one for that, or you don't have one for whatever reason, then you would need to set that up and just come back into the wizard. So 7906. We've also got this update method. Now, I'll quickly cover what this refers to. It's something you can change later on. I would always recommend initially that you accept the first option. So we're going to be entering exchange rates when we key in transactions. Now, there is an exchange rate option or an exchange rate set against each currency. We'll show you how to update that in a moment as well. So if when you enter a transaction, let's say it's in dollars, and let's say it's picking up an exchange rate of, let's say 1.2. So when we key in something in dollars, it will pull that exchange rate through. And if I change that exchange rate, so I override it there and then, this is where we need to choose one of these options. So if it's different, what we've keyed into what it already is set to, then it's going to prompt us to save the changes. Do we want to do that? Yes or no? So if you choose yes, it just updates the currency table. If you choose no, it just leaves the existing exchange rate set as it is, but it will still accept whatever you've keyed in for your transaction there and then. Now, you would get that every time you enter a slightly different exchange rate to what's currently set. Second option, it would do it automatically. So if you key in a slightly different exchange rate, rather than it prompt you and say, this is different, do you want to save the changes? It'll just automatically save it. So you'll not be prompted each and every time. And then the third option is to never save it. So although it's different, we just actually leave the one in place that's on the currencies list. But I would encourage you, and I'm going to do it as well, just so you can see the points at when that appears. I always call it, once you've started using Foreign Trader, it's more annoying than anything else. It comes up every single time with this option. So although I do recommend you set it to this initially, what you tend to find is that people go in and either choose the second or third options. You can switch to that at any time. So I'm just going to leave it set to the first one. So actually we haven't changed any options there. I've just accepted the defaults, click next, and then I click finish. And that's it set up. I'm ready to go. Now the first thing to quickly look at this stage is the currencies table. So we find that on settings and then currencies. Now the ones I'm going to be using today are going to be pound sterling, which is my base currency. I'm going to be using US dollar and euros. I'll just use those three just to keep things nice and simple. The rest that are listed, this list would go down to number 100. 100 is the max that you can have. I've never come across anyone actually dealing in more than 100 currencies. Obviously, there is that restriction there. But after the first three, the rest of them are just in alphabetical order. Obviously, there's some that probably even you look at sometimes and you think, I haven't even heard of that one. You never know, it might help you in the local pub quiz or something like that. So, but you can change them if required. So Argentinian peso, for instance, if I just highlight that and I click edit, I can change the title if I want to use it for some other currency. So maybe I've already got one further down the list and I think actually I'll just push that further up. So I can change the name, I can set the currency code, the symbol. Now you might find that you may need to look that up with an internet search, how to type a certain currency symbol in there if you do want that. And then it's just a case of keying in the exchange rate. So how many of the, whatever the currency is, how many of those units per pounds, whatever your base currency is. So in my case, per pound sterling, it'll automatically work out the reverse for you. And then it's just a case of making sure you've got the major currency unit and the minor currency unit entered. So I've already got them set up. The only thing I'm going to do for these two is I'm going to set an exchange rate. So for US dollars, I'm going to try and keep things nice and simple. So we'll start 1.2. You'll see when I tab out of that field, it works out the reverse exchange rate for us. And we'll do the same for euros as well. So again, I'll just put 1.2. How close that is at the moment, I'm not sure. If anyone is probably as old as me, you might remember when it was nearly $2 to the pound. That seems a long time ago. Anyway, we've got 1.2 entered against both of these currencies now. And we'll close. Now you can go into that list at any time. It is manual updates only. It doesn't connect to any HMRC or banking software. It's just a case of you would maintain that manually if needed. But again, you will just be able to key in an exchange rate there and then when you're keying in transactions. Now for customers, I've got the three. So sterling, I'm going to leave as is. Euro, I'll just click into that one, into defaults, and I'll be able to change that. So I want to change that one to euro. I'll save it. And we'll do the same for the US dollar customer. Now I'm able to change that because I haven't entered any transactions against these accounts yet. So again, we'll just save it. Now suppliers works in exactly the same way. So again, I've got three set up. I'll pop into that euro supplier, into defaults. I'll change the currency. Final one we'll do, we'll just do that dollar supplier. So US dollar, and we'll just close out of that then. Now what you will see on the suppliers list, which is a little bit different to the customers list. If I look on the customers list, you'll see everything just appears in my base currency. But on the suppliers list, you do get some additional columns. You can see you've got the base currency balance, you've got the foreign balance, and it would also indicate what currency it's using. Bank accounts is pretty much the same. Again, I've got 3 set up just so you can easily see them. And again, we get some additional columns. So in addition to the standard balance column, which is looking at your base currency values, we've got the foreign balance, and then we've got the currency code. So again, what I'll do is I'm just going to set this one to US dollars, save it, and we'll do the same for the euro account as well. So we're set up and we're ready to go at this stage. Any questions from anyone so far? That's just set up. So we've enabled the foreign trader option. Actually, let's just pop back to the slides a second. So we've enabled foreign trader. We've had a look at the currencies table and how we can update the exchange rates, and we flagged some customers and suppliers and bank accounts to operate in a foreign currency. Next, we're going to start looking at entering transactions. Now, very little changes when it comes to entering transactions. So whether entering a bank payment or bank receipts, or we're doing an invoice, a credit, a quote, an order, a batch invoice or a credit, a customer receipt, supply payment, everything is pretty much the same. The only thing that's any different is that on some screens, you're going to need to, you can't have a mix of currencies. So if you're entering a series of bank payments, you couldn't enter a sterling payment and a dollar payment on the same screen. And when you go to enter a foreign currency transaction, you'll see that the exchange rate, generally it appears at the top. So let's just have a quick look at that. We'll run through a couple of demonstrations just so you can see what it looks like. So back to my screen. So let's start with a basic bank payment. We'll just use that euro account for the sake of argument. So euro bank account, into payments, we'll do a bank payment. So we got the right bank selected. It's picked up today's date. I'll pop a reference in. Doesn't really matter what the nominal code is at this stage. And details, I'll just say services. And we'll do 100. Now you'll notice for the net and the tax column and the gross column for that matter, if you're up to date software, it will have the relevant currency symbol. So it pulls that through again for you based on the relevant, in this case, the relevant bank account that we got selected. The exchange rate's at the top here. Now let's say I change that. So for this particular payment, let's say it was 1.18. And when I tab out of that field, because it's different to what was originally entered and pulled through from the currencies table, as soon as I tab out of that field, I get this message. So this relates to those 3 settings that we had. It tells us that the exchange rate you've used for this transaction is different to the one that's set up on the currencies list. Do you want to update your currencies list with this new rate? I can choose yes or no. Now, if I choose yes, all it does is it'll add that 1.18 to the currencies table. It'll pop that to the exchange rate for euros. If I choose no, it would leave the currencies list as 1.2, but it would still let me continue with this transaction using the exchange rate of 1.18. Let's just choose yes. Now, to keep things simple, I'm not worried about VAT in this session. We always get asked, well, what should I use for the tax code? The tax code will vary. It depends whether you're UK based, Republic of Ireland based, or anywhere else. And also, who are you dealing with? Now, you could be dealing within the EU, or the EC, sorry, and your exchange, it might be a service, it might be a product. It could be a number of things. So if you need advice on which tax code to use, then do check out the information that's in our help center. There is what we term our tax code finder. Nice and easy to find that article as well. And it will guide you through a series of questions, and it will say, right, well, based on what you've entered, this is the tax code that we'd recommend that you use for that. So it's picked up on your VAT return correctly. Anyway, I've got mine set so it just defaults to T9, so it won't calculate any VAT anywhere. And we'll just save that. Now, if we pop to the bank accounts list, you can see the Euro bank account. Now, because it's an actual Euro bank account, we've paid $100, 100 euros out of it. So the balance in that currency is minus 100. The base currency equivalent using that exchange rate is £84.75, again as a negative. Now, with the foreign trader enabled, what you'll find is that every time you enter a transaction, it records it in the foreign currency, but it also records that transaction in what you would term your base currency. So it's two sets of figures per transaction. You're going to have what we would term the foreign net value and foreign VAT value, but you're also going to have the base net and the base tax value. So it does that for every transaction that you record. If it's a base currency transaction, it still does that, but obviously it uses an exchange rate of 1-to-1, so both sets of figures are the same. Let's have a look if we have a look in customers, batch invoice. If you choose Euro account, you'll see it pulls through that updated exchange rate that we just said we wanted to use. And we just complete that as normal. Now it is one exchange rate for this batch of transactions. So I could enter it against additional Euro customers as long as I'm using the same exchange rate. If the exchange rate is different, then I would need to enter them one at a time, essentially. So enter them individually. But again, you just key it in exactly the same way. Nothing changes in that respect. So we'll just close out of that one. If we were invoicing, again, I'll choose that Euro customer. You'll see when I do that, everything changes to euros. So the price, the net, the VAT, you've got your totals at the bottom. And you've also got your exchange rate here as well. And again, you can see how it's pulled that through. So that would be the same for invoices, sales orders, purchase orders, quotations. It would pick up the relevant currency that the customer or supplier account is flagged as. So we'll just close out of that one as well. Right, what I'm going to do next though, I'm going to quickly enter some supplier transactions. You're much more likely to have to enter foreign currency transactions for suppliers than customers, as it'll be your supplier that's sort of much more likely to dictate that. When it's customers, you'll probably dictate it, so you're probably invoicing your base currency. Not always, but probably more than likely you will. Right, now just before I do that, what I'm going to do is show you what's going to happen in the background. So these are the transactions that I'm going to enter in just a moment. Right, so we're going to enter a purchase invoice against our dollar supplier. It's going to be for $100, and we'll use the exchange rate of 1.2, giving us a sterling value of £83.33. So remember, it's recording that in two currencies, your foreign currency and your base currency. We're then going to enter the payment against that invoice. Again, that will be a payment for $100. So as far as the supplier is concerned, they've invoiced us for $100, we've paid them $100. But actually, by the time we've made the payment, we're going to see the exchange rate's changed. So there's a fluctuation in that exchange rate. And actually, when we key in that payment for $100, the exchange rate was 1.18. Now, The sterling equivalent value at that point is £84.75. Now, if you were doing that manually, so you sat there with a calculator, you can see in the sterling value, the sterling equivalent, you've got a difference. And this is where you would normally either post an invoice or a credit note to adjust the account. And you would code that to your exchange rate variance nominal code, that's 7906. Now, your software with the foreign trader module enabled is essentially going to do that for you. It will post that adjustment automatically. Now, that adjustment will be to the base currency only. That's where the adjustment's needed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that looks like in Sage. So we'll just head back to my screen. We'll pop into suppliers. Again, I'll use that dollar supplier. We'll do a batch invoice. I'll date that. Let's pop that on the 1st of the month. Just pop a reference in. Doesn't matter about the nominal code. Details, I'll just say services. And we're going to say it's for $100. T9 just to keep things nice and simple. I don't want to overcomplicate things with VAT values or reverse charges or anything of that nature. Just straightforward $100. That's what we want. I'm going to leave the exchange rate set to 1.2 and we're going to save that. Now, if we have a look at the supplier account, you'll see foreign balance. We can say it's $100 and the base currency equivalent is £83.33. If we have a look at the activity, you'll see when we're looking at that activity, it's just displaying everything in dollars. That's the currency that we work on with this specific supplier. So it means that we can talk the same figures if we're querying anything. I'm sure if you've done it manually in the past, you thought, oh, right, well, it's £83.33. Which one's that the equivalent of? So with this, you're talking about essentially you're talking the same language, you're talking the same values. Now you can change and you can view your base currency equivalent values just by clicking your little toggle button at the top. So view in pounds and it switches. So let's just switch back. So we're viewing everything in dollars again. Right, what we'll do next is we're going to pay that off. So we'll just pop into bank accounts, select my dollar account. Now something to be aware of is you've got to match like with like. So I can't use my sterling bank account to make a supplier payment to a dollar supplier. If I try that, so let's use supplier payment. So sterling bank account, if I choose that dollar supplier, I'll get a message saying you can't do that. So you've got to match like for like. Now, sometimes it'll mean that, well, actually, you haven't got a dollar bank account or you haven't got a euro bank account. You just pay them out your normal account. So in that instance, just to make the payment go through, you'll need to maybe set up a dummy foreign currency account. And you use that as almost like a go-between so that you can post that transaction. So anyway, we'll come back and we'll choose the dollar bank account. We'll select the dollar supplier. So we can see we've got the $100 outstanding. We're going to say we've got to pay that in full, so $100. But it is that slightly different exchange rate. So rather than 1.2, when we made the payment, we're going to say the exchange rate is 1.18. And we'll just save that. Again, prompted because I've keyed in a different exchange rate to what's on the list. So I'll just use yes this time. Save the changes and then close out. So again, we can see the foreign balance. All we've done out of that account so far is minus 100. We paid out $100. And the base balance, we've got the equivalent value there. Now let's have a look at the supplier activity. And you can see the dollar account, the dollar supplier, it's back to a zero balance. Let's have a look at the activity. And you can see all we've got on there is we've got an invoice for $100, we've got a payment against it for $100. So as far as the dollar side of that supplier is concerned, we're all settled. That's fine. If we switch across to view the account in pounds, though, you'll be able to see what's happened with that difference by the time it converts it to the to your base currency. So if we just look purely at the base currency equivalent values, the invoice was £83.33. The payment value in base currency was 84.75. So in theory, in our base currency, we've made an overpayment. So if we were just operating on a single currency software, base currency only, we're sitting there with a calculator, we'd have an overpayment. So just about, what's that, £1, work it out in my head there, £1.42 overpayment we'd have. And that's what the revaluation transaction, where that comes in. So you can see, just to settle the account, what it's done is it's posted an additional invoice for the difference, and it posts that to the revaluation nominal code. So it does it on the same date as the actual payment. So we've got that additional purchase invoice, £1.42, which accounts for that exchange rate variance. I hope that makes sense. If you can get your head around that bit, which is why I try to use that really simple example, then the rest of it should be hopefully fairly straightforward. Obviously, if it was the other way and we'd underpaid in the base currency, then it would need to raise a credit note for the difference. Your suppliers still, they've invoiced for $100, they've received $100. So they're none the wiser. But in your accounts, you would have, in theory, in your base currency, you've underpaid them. So it pops on an automatic purchase credit note for the difference. Again, just to zero out the balances. I hope that makes sense. And again, any questions? And do remember, you will receive a copy of the recording of today's session if you want to run through it again at your own pace. Right, we're going to move on though. We're going to pick up on, again, similar to what we've just looked at, and it's foreign bank account revaluation. Now, the reason for this, and again, I've got a bit of an example which we'll run through in a moment, is that when you run the likes of your management reports, so the likes of your trial balance and your balance sheet, you run those at a particular period. So it might be the end of each month, quarter, 6 months, end of your financial year. And at the end of that financial year, if you've got foreign currency bank accounts, you need that to reflect the base currency value of whatever that balance is at that point in time. Now you might think, well, does it not do that? It's not doing it automatically, which is why you've got this revaluation wizard. So you need that foreign currency balance. It needs to reflect what the relevant base currency equivalent value is at a particular point in time. This is where the revaluation option comes in. Now, there are a number of different areas where you'll be able to access this wizard. You can do it within the bank accounts. You'll have a foreign bank revaluation link at the top. You can go into modules. In fact, I'll just quickly show you this, how you can access this. So you can go into bank accounts and you'll have this new foreign bank revaluation icon. You can go into modules and then wizards, foreign bank revaluation. And if you do actually run the month end option, so when you access that month end, it'll be in there as well. You'll have a revaluation option in here as well. So launches the same wizard. Now I'm going to go back to the slides just for a moment, and I've got a bit of an example for you, just so you can understand what's happening and why. So this is the scenario that we're going to quickly set up in just a moment as well. Now I'm just going to, actually no, we won't. Right, so in this scenario, we're going to use the dollar bank account, and we're going to say, right, on the 1st of October, we had $1,000 in the bank account, and we used an exchange rate of 1.25. So equivalent value at the time was £800. So remember, when you're entering those transactions, it records in the two values, foreign value and the sterling equivalent. On the 10th of October, we paid in $500. Slightly different exchange rate, 1.18. And the sterling equivalent of that was 423.73. And then 25th of October, again, another $500, slightly different exchange rate. And you've got the sterling value there. Now we're going to say at the end of October, we had £2,000. Just bear me 1 second there. Sorry about that. Just about to choke, I think. So we're going to say at the end of October, the closing balance was £2,000. $2,000, sorry. So all those values added up at $2,000 in that foreign account. Sterling equivalent, adding up those three equivalent values, gives us 1640.40. So if we were to run our management report at that time, because our management report is based on our base currency, that's what it would show. What we'll also do though is at the end of November, we're going to say there's no other transactions. At the end of November, we've still got sat there with $2,000 in that account. But the exchange rate at the end of November is 1.19. Now, if we were to take that £2,000 out of that account at that point, we're going to say, well, at the exchange rate of 1.19, the sterling equivalent value of that $2,000 is 1680.67. So there is a discrepancy there. And that's why we need to use that revaluation wizard. It will put the adjustment through for the exchange rate fluctuation, so that when we're running the likes of our trial balance, our balance sheet, it's going to reflect an accurate balance in our accounts. Now, it's really easy to use the wizard, but let's switch back to my screen and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Now, I've just reset my accounts at this point, so there are no transactions in my accounts. So we'll go into bank accounts, US dollar account. I'm going to show money coming in, so we'll do a bank receipt. So as per the example that we just showed you, on the 1st of October, doesn't matter about nominal codes at this point, so I'll just put services, and we're going to say we had $1,000. I'll ignore tax codes, I'll just let it default T9. We don't want to get bogged down by VAT still. But we're going to say the exchange rate at the time was 1.25. Let's get yes to that as well. And we'll save it. We'll do the next transaction, which in the example was on the 10th of October. Again, doesn't matter about the nominal code. I'll just do services for that one. This was for $500. Slightly different exchange rate on the example. It was 1.18. We'll save the change to the exchange rate. And we'll save that one. And then the third transaction, again, still on the same bank account. We'll use the 25th of October. Again, was for $500. And the exchange rate for this one was 1.2. See that message keep popping up every time. And we'll just save it. Now, looking at that list, if it's a foreign currency bank account, $2,000 in it is, it's always worth $2,000. Nothing changes just because of the exchange rate. $2,000 is $2,000, so it's static. It's the base currency equivalent value that changes. So we're going to say, right, at the end of November, the £2,000, we want to revalue this bank account using an exchange rate of 1.19. So we'll access the wizard, choose your currency. So that would filter when you choose a currency, it will filter any bank accounts. So if you've got multiple bank accounts, it will display the relevant ones. Excuse me. So we'll select the bank account or bank accounts that we want to revalue. Click next. Pop in the date. So we're going to say it was the 30th of November. And at the time, the exchange rate was 1.19. If we click next, what it's now saying is for this bank account on that date, the dollar balance, $2,000. The original base currency figure at the time was 1640.40. However, the revalued $2,000 in base currency is now this amount. That's what it's worth as at the end of November at an exchange rate of 1.19. So there's a discrepancy there of £40.27. So it calculates the difference. We click post, and that's it done for you. Now, because I haven't posted anything else, if I just look at the bank accounts list, we can see it's still $2,000, but it's got that updated base balance. You may have other transactions or subsequent transactions in there as well, in which case that might not necessarily, as per the example. If we have a look in transactions, you can see the 3 transactions that are entered. And then we've got the revaluation journal. So that revaluation journal is in your base currency only. It's a bit like that adjustment against the supplier accounts that we looked at earlier. Just excuse me one moment there. Excuse me. Right, so this journal, it's equivalent of that, almost like that additional invoice that was posted earlier. It's the revaluation transaction, so it's done it against the bank. It does it as a journal. So between your relevant foreign currency bank account, and again that's 7906, so it picks that up automatically and it posts that for the difference. Now remember that difference, it's going to be in your base currency only. There is no adjustment to the foreign currency value. It is a base currency adjustment only. Now, there is detailed information available from our help center on that if you need more information about it. Sometimes that can take a little bit to get your head round as well. So do watch the recording back as well. If you think of any questions, do get in touch as well. Right, let's get back to the slides. Now, if you've got any questions, if you want to pop them in there now, I'll pick those up before we leave. If you weren't quite with us at the start when we mentioned about questions, you just need to click the little speech bubble icon, give it a click, and you'll then be able to start typing in that bottom right-hand corner. Our help center, it's jam-packed full of useful information to help you with your software, whether it's support guides, webinars, and the recordings. There'll be little videos on how to complete certain tasks. And if you can't find what you're after, get in touch. Our support team is there to support you. That's what they're there for. No need to struggle with anything. Get in touch. Webinar-wise, December, we've got loads of sessions still. What's new in version 31? Festive messages on your invoices. Something a little bit different, that one. So looking at your amending your invoice layout to include that festive message or other text that you might want to include. Global changes we're going to be looking at, remote data access, and also year-end as well. Our timetable does run up to the end of January as of this morning, so do check that out as well. The link is included on your follow-up email. Throughout November and early December, we have concentrating on corrections. So if you want to get your knowledge up to speed, I think there's only a couple of those sessions left now, but the recordings are available should you want them. And if you think of anything you'd like to see covered next year, let us know. Pop it on the survey or even just reply to any of the webinar emails and that will come direct to myself. So if you think of anything you'd like to see covered, get in touch. Now that brings me to the end of today's session. There'll be a little survey pop up as you leave the webinar today, so would appreciate it if you can take a minute to complete that. Give us a score, pop any comments, thoughts, ideas on there. So if you can do that, really appreciate it. Your follow-up email will be with you in around about an hour's time. So do get yourself registered. Loads of sessions remaining in December, but loads of sessions for January as well. So do get yourself registered. But thank you for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it interesting, found it useful, giving you a little bit more confidence. If you're already using Foreign Trader, hopefully it's maybe giving you a little bit of reassurance or point you in the right direction as to how it should work. For those of you maybe just considering it, you've seen how it works now. Remember, it's available via the Sage shop to add to your subscription if you haven't already. Right, we'll end the webinar just at that point. Many thanks for coming along. Take care, stay safe, and do get yourself registered. And I hope to see you on some of the webinars very soon. Many thanks.